Join us on Now We Consume. Take in the knowledge, take in the laughs, indulge in the topics with us. The Now We Consume podcast will take you through the parts of your day you normally dread. Why suffer through the existential crisis of life alone when you can do it with us? And now we consume.
This is not meant to be a conspiracy episode or podcast, but we may cover some topics that dance that line like a toddler dances on their mother's last nerve. This podcast is rated I, for immature audiences only.
If you've ever considered becoming an OnlyFans or Feet Finder content creator, or even a podcast host, then welcome to the show where for just $6, you can watch Gibbs play in an inflatable pool filled with mayonnaise while wearing just a Speedo.
No, I don't like mayonnaise.
Welcome back to the Now We Consume podcast. I'm your host, Pip, here as always with my co-host, Gibbs.
Fuck you.
But mayonnaise is an instrument, Gibbs.
Mayonnaise is not an instrument.
So, yeah, tonight we're going to be discussing the death of the careers, the resurrection of the trades, the rise of the gig economy. And we figured that, or I figured rather, Gibbs didn't know I was doing that intro, but OnlyFans, Feet Finder, specialty streams like Twitch where models play in inflatable pools filled with various materials, water, whipped cream, or even mayonnaise. All things are on the table.
No, they're not on the table.
There's a visual for you, Gibbs.
I don't want to do that.
You in a Speedo in a pool full of mayonnaise.
I mean, I get if you like them hunky, but like, no.
I like them
No.
thick. I like them chunky.
Like I get that I resemble Moto. I understand that, but like, it's just it's the thought of mayonnaise going to places where mayonnaise shouldn't be. That's what gets me. You're gonna be sitting there like,
So, you gotta open yourself up to new experiences, all right?
yeah, but the smell of 3-day-old mayonnaise coming from my crotch is just not what I want. It's the forbidden
would you not
cheese.
shower though? Good God.
Yeah, but you're never getting all. It's mayonnaise. You have to like bleach your like. I don't know how. What, I have to be naked running through a car wash like 5 times? It's like, I am so sorry. I was in a vat of mayonnaise, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." I too would be frolicking through a car wash 5 times in a week.
Yes, I would like the undercarriage treatment. Thank you.
Oh, that nibbles. But oh, man. I just,
Don't forget the coin purse.
oh, it's a Grundle setting. No, I'm kidding. But
Oh God, not the grundle. Apologies in advance, folks. This has been a weekend of weekends. Gibbs was basically on his deathbed, so that's why the episode is coming out late. And I have just been busy dealing with life.
yeah, you actually took a page out of my book this week.
Yeah, there's alcohol involved tonight, and Gibbs is just kind of in a mood. So
Oh yeah.
we're just kind of trying to relax and chill and get this episode out and have a little fun with it, because while some of the information might be a little dry, it is important. It is something that we're hoping will hit you in the face a little bit, kind of like a well-lubed dildo of consequence per se. But a lot of this is stuff that just isn't getting talked about.
Exactly.
So Gibbs, I know you said you had a couple points you wanted to make right away, so go ahead and take it away.
Exactly. I wanted to quickly set up this episode by looking at some numbers and some history here about comparing really the work environment and everything leading up, really from post-World War II to the 1950s up until today. I want to kind of compare and contrast what the average salary was back then and its 2025 equivalent in spending value, as well as what the bills were, average house, things like that. Because I want to build a picture here as to how the country has changed and both the good and the bad points. I know we've loosely touched upon this in a couple of episodes between economics and a few other things, but I want to drive this point home that simply things have not gotten better as time has gone on, and I want to explain why. In some areas, I will say absolutely, but it's more due to technological advancements and the availability of information and education rather than the economy getting better. So I just wanted to paint that picture and kind of get going with this. So quickly, kind of to give us a bit of a primer here. I'm only going from the 1950s because really the U.S. economy, or really even the world economy pre-World War II, was so different that it's hard to be able to give it any sort of relative meaning.
Context.
Yeah, context, because there were far few government exemptions or even tax incentives, things like that. The tax structure is very different. Also, civil rights is a big issue. There's a lot going on to where it's not even really worth diluting this conversation down with. That's a whole different discussion, which we already kind of loosely talked about. But to give you an idea, I just want to do a quick rundown. In the 1950s, the average family income adjusted for today's dollars, the average family income was $39,800. In the 1960s,
True income of $3,300.
Yeah. The income of the time was $3,300, but adjusted for inflation and everything, it would be worth about $39,800 today. So $40,000, or AKA you're making your $20 an hour, give or take. Now in the 60s, that goes up to about $46,000 in today's dollars. In the 1970s, yep.
I just want to stick my tip in here. The $24 an hour equivalent was $2 an hour.
Yeah.
$2 an hour.
I know.
Equals 24 in 2025.
Yeah, our income has lost its value 12 times. Or money back then was worth 12 times more than what it is today. Per dollar.
That hurts.
Yeah, I know. That's why the statistic that we saw last week of the US dollar has lost, what was it, 94 or 96% of its buying power?
96, I think.
Yeah, this goes to show. But that's why when we talked about it, getting off the gold standard, doing all that really kind of hurt. But in the 1960s, you're up to, the $37,500 a year, or approximately $46,200, give or take. And then in the 70s, you're up to that $43,000 mark. So that's kind of, again, in the similar vein. So you're noticing, even in the 80s, $41,000 to $42,000. In the 90s, we go up to $47,000. In the 2000s, that's a big shift. That was a huge boom. That was the internet boom and everything else. You're talking the average American was making $32,000, or adjusted was about $54,000. That was really the peak of the American dream in terms of relative to today. Where from that late 90s to that early mid 2000s, before the 2008, housing crisis, the bubble and everything, before that happening, that is where America was at really one of its peaks. The reason I wanted to bring this up is in the 2010s, it goes all the way up to $59,000, but I'll be showing you a point in a minute here why that's important. And then in 2019, it goes up to about $65,000. This is all pre-COVID. This is all to where the dollar really does kind of have a lot more buying power. Now, we already kind of started to see inflation really hitting in the mid to late teens, and it was starting to shift to where what COVID really set off, which was that we're not like in hyperinflation, we're definitely in an inflationary period. So what the fuck is my cat doing? Anyways. So
COVID kind of showed a lot of the shit going on behind the curtain that was going to come out eventually.
Yes.
I think that if the 2020s, I think would have shaped up a lot differently had COVID not hit. It would have just come out over time, kind of in drips. But with COVID hitting, everything just screeched to a halt, and everything was just brought front and center all at once.
We had basically 15 to 20 years of economic downturn happen in like two to 3 years. And that's part of the problem. All the inflation, all the money printing, everything just... We basically went through an economic depression that would have spanned, probably a decade or two, that wouldn't have really felt that bad.
Yeah.
But it all got smushed in. But the reason why I wanted to bring up these numbers is what you're noticing is throughout from World War II up until COVID, the average American always brought in, it brought up a little bit, but anywhere between 40,000 at the lowest, roughly, in equivalent, to 60,000. That's always been the middle class. That has always been that amount. Now, something to consider is with all those changes, for instance, in the 50s, you really didn't have benefits like healthcare and health insurance. That started coming around in the 60s as well, between employer-sponsored health insurance was expanded, and even in the 70s and 80s, started becoming something that was even legally forced and or required. You had different benefits. You had pensions, which no longer exist. That's another talking point in a minute. As well, we started having 401k or contributions, different pension contributions. What ended up happening is not only were the average wages increasing, but that is with the offset of having to pay for higher and higher health insurance over the decades and contributions. The bigger thing I wanted to bring into now is the reason why we're setting up for the death of careers is because of the housing market, which I know we've talked about before, but I want everyone to be aware of this. In the 1950s, the relative price for a house, the average house, was $93,000, meaning they were making like $35,000, $40,000, and the house was $93,000. That is something.
Is that the adjusted number?
That's the adjusted number. The average price was $7,300 or $7,500 was the average.
God.
To give you guys an idea, the house that I'm in right now, my grandparents bought in '67 for $11,000. As of last year, without all the additions we've done, it's worth $800,000 to $900,000. There is no market. There is no money. There's nothing you can do to ever outcompete that kind of rate of increase in the market.
Yeah.
The point I want to get at is that alone from the 50s, even into the 60s, the average American was able to afford a mortgage. The average American, as long as you were working a decent job, it didn't even matter. You could be working at a hardware store. You could be working literally McDonald's back then or other shit, or even doing whatever. And odds are you could at least afford
$18 to $23 an hour, and you had a house.
Yeah, and the equivalent. Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Back then, you could make the average money and afford the average house. However, once we started having this problem of between corporations getting involved, mass immigration, and a few other things, it has gotten to the point to where the housing cost and housing crisis has gone exponentially. So much so, if you look at the 70s, the average house was about $40,000, or adjusted right now is for $223,000 to $313,000, which that's still kind of high, but like at least you could afford it back then. Into the 80s was almost the same cost, roughly. It doesn't really go up that much. It only goes up to $273,000. In the 90s, it goes up to $374,000. In the 2000s, it goes up to $476,000, and that's all relative. So the entirety, yes, those are shifting more, but most Americans are still keeping up with that, with their wage
One
increases.
thing that I want to kind of point out in the 80s, they did have some much higher interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that people dealt with. Lower house prices, but much higher interest rates.
Yes. But the catch is the average American who was making $46,000, if the
Could
house
still handle it.
Well, if the house is only $73,000, that's
Yeah.
less than double. Whereas nowadays, what's even crazy is to afford the average house in America, even in my area, so my state in particular, Massachusetts, the issue we have is you have to make over $150,000 a year to afford the average home. Because the average house is $450,000 to $500,000, and that's without any down payment or anything else and all that. The issue is just it's to where you have to make a ridiculous amount of money to even be allowed to have a chance. And there's also no way to save, because who the hell is going to save up $200,000 to bring that price down? No one, especially in the taxes and everything else, and also the fees and capital gains and everything else. It's just a mess. The reason I wanted to bring this up as a preference for everything is there was a time in American history to where if you had a decent job, you could afford to pay your bills and have a house.
Not that long ago, even.
Not that long ago. And also something to consider is over time, the bills get more and more complex and more necessary. There used to be a time in American history where in the 1950s, all you needed was a house and a car. And that's it. Now you have to have a cell phone or house phone. You have to have internet. You have to have access to electronics and other devices. You have to have different types of insurances. You have to have different types of insurance either for kids or for pets or anything else. The list keeps growing, but yet the wages in terms of relative buying power do not. And when you reference our previous episodes, particularly the one about the feds and our Treasury Department, the issue has been we have printed so much money recently that the dollar is massively devalued. So, this is part of the reason. It's one of the many parts why the old ideas of work, the old ideas of working at a company for 20, 30 years and having a big pension, a big retirement are gone. For the vast majority of people, all that's gone. There's no such thing anymore. You don't get the same kind of benefits or reward from staying long-term at a company. It sucks. And there are some that do. Thankfully, I'm in one of those right now, and it's something where it's like a family-owned thing. It's like a small thing. But for a lot of them, you're not going to see that because really, there's no incentive for them. And we're going to be going over as to why the different changes. But it was definitely, I wanted to make people aware that a lot of this is based off the housing market, because at the end of the day, everyone has to live somewhere. You got to sleep somewhere, bro. Second of all, when it comes to the bills, between inflation with the overprinting of money, as well as the higher obligations and more bills that you have to pay, you get squeezed. It's that simple.
Yeah. So on the housing, I just kind of want to make a little mushroom standpoint. A lot of people are opting to live in vehicles now because you can finance a essentially cargo van.
Yeah.
Buy a used U-Haul truck and pay to have it renovated, and it costs less than a house.
Well,
and you've got your transportation, you've got your house, you've got all your utility needs right there in one, and it's far less all in one package. And it's becoming more and more popular, especially out in the West Coast.
oh yeah, van life is a big thing.
Van life is a huge thing out in California.
But unfortunately, it's because of necessity, not by choice.
Yeah. Necessity is the mother of all invention. So people are getting more and more creative, and they're actually coming out with more and more products that are focused on that kind of lifestyle. And I'll give them credit. They're coming out with some absolutely fantastic ideas.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's shit that in 2025, we're pushing van life on people because they can't afford the fucking rent.
Yeah. But it's unfortunately a problem from the top down.
Oh, 100%.
The issue is not to have like a slight aside, but I know we've made this point previously, but I do want to make this point in this podcast. The issue is when you make it so people can't retire, what happens is they don't leave their jobs. So therefore, the next generation doesn't move up and that generation doesn't move up. When they're talking about delayed growth, one of the issues you have is what used to happen is when people got into their 50s or 60s, they would retire or pass on their business or leave their position of management. And then the people in the 30s and 40s would move up. Then the higher 20-year-olds move up. Then the lower 20-year-olds would move up. And the 18-year-olds would step in. Now you're noticing in many places, there are people in their 30s, 40s, even 50s still in entry-level jobs. You have the issue of the people that were in management, they're working there until their 70s or their 80s. The problem is you're delaying the entire process by a decade or two. And they're wondering why is there no one there? It's like, well, they're there. It's just, unfortunately, we've created an economy where those people can't retire. So therefore, they got to be somewhere. So they're going to be there. You don't give them the space to be able to move on or do something else. So that's going to be an issue in almost every single segment of the economy. And the thing is, it's not those people's fault. If you're someone in your 70s that's still working, you're like, man, I thought having, $2,000 to $3,000 a month coming in would have been great when I retired. And you realize that barely buys a car.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, don't get me started on cars.
Oh, dude, it's insane.
There are places offering 30-year payment plans on vehicles
at 30% interest. My favorite one I saw when I was at the dealership, somebody paid, I think it was $130 or $140 for a Cadillac. It was like the Blackwing edition, whatever. Their payment was like $1,400 a month. That's
a house, bro.
That was 30%.
Oh my God.
And they were going to pay into, I think it was like $210,000 by the time they're done or something. 220.
That's a fucking house.
Yeah, but the thing is, they made enough money, they didn't care. They're like, whatever. I'm just going to trade it in a couple of years anyway. But I think there's a lot of people that one of the reasons they're spending that money is because they don't. So I know my generation's very nihilistic when it comes to the economy. A lot of us assume that why would I save for retirement? I'm going to be dead anyway, or there's not going to be nothing for me anyway. I know for this for a fact I will never get Social Security. I'm 30 years old. I'll never.
A lot of people are banking on some kind of disaster scenario happening, so that they don't have to worry about it. And I'm kind of wondering if that's not going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's the problem. It's like, again, I'm still putting away money and I'm still financially doing well. But the problem is for most people my age, I know, they couldn't give a shit.
They're not.
Well, think about this, right? If Social Security is already insolvent as of today, and our government's doing nothing to fucking fix it other than spending and printing more money, it's just not going to exist in another 40 years. It's not. So it's like, It's clearly not my problem. You know, which is unfortunate because then what happens to our kids and grandkids where it's like, you think we're screwed. Imagine they're going to have to pay off our debt with triple or quadruple the interest. Or like, imagine if, God forbid, the day comes where our payments on our interest are more than our GDP. And it's like, we're done. That's it. Wrap it up. That's here's the country. And we're heading that way. That's the problem.
Rapidly.
Beyond rapidly. Oh, wow.
Oh,
geez, that's a fucking flashbang. If I opened the wrong window, just. But it is something for people to consider that.
Yeah.
Make smart moves financially, and diversify. Make sure you're, well situated and have your shit together.
And invest in precious metals. Invest in brass and lead dispensers and gold and food, ways to raise food, learn how to cook a human, things like that.
Land and people you can count on. That's, unfortunately in this world, you have to make your own community, people. You can't trust the community that's there. I hate to say it, but it's the reality. So
pretty much.
That's one of the points I did want to bring up, though, is when we're talking about the older generation not, I don't want to say like giving over the reins or anything, handing over the reins, but it has become such a big point to where I know people, even other industries, where they simply can't innovate as a business or they can't change because they have their parents or grandparents that still hold on to it, that still want the income, that still need this or that. Or then the other problem is with the taxes and everything else, it's they can't afford to not have them own it because then the tax system gets really fucky by trying to have to pay them as an employee or doing other stuff. It puts these small businesses in a situation to where they have almost no choice. They just kind of have to deal with it.
They're just stuck in limbo.
They're forever stuck in limbo. And that's not fair. That's not right. But a lot of them just simply have no choice. And you also have to consider, too, the bigger issue is because of inflation and everything else, you can't really pay people more because you can't necessarily charge more for your product. Because every single company is having to try to outcompete these big national corporations or international corporations is the problem. At the end of the day, it's if
they're mostly competing with China.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you can't outcompete slave labor when it comes to cost.
Nope.
The Chinese are really good at slave labor and their children. Like that's just their thing. So, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna do it? Again, refer to our previous episode about tariffs. Just throwing that out there. But it just becomes a situation where as Americans, we get stuck for trying to do the right thing. And unfortunately, our government really hasn't been helping us with trying to do the right thing when it comes to our tax laws and everything else because there's no incentive for us to try to start businesses or keep them going. So what do a lot of people do? They sell it off, they cash out, they sell it to an investment firm, or they sell off the land, sell off the assets, and then that money just gets spent into the ether, away.
That was what I wanted to say. Investment firms. They should not be allowed to buy American homes. Period. Investment firms should not be allowed to buy homes that people are supposed to live in.
I think the rule should be that single family homes have to be bought by single families. That's it.
Landlords, I understand that.
Yeah.
And if they want to do that, fine. Cap it. You can own a maximum of X amount of properties. Yeah. And that's it. Now, is that interfering with fair free market? A little bit. but it prevents too much land holding by too many or too few people.
I have no problem with somebody if they want their business to be, being a landowner, running apartments, running stuff like that. The issue is when you buy up all the single family homes in an area and then de facto basically have a control over the rent prices in that area. That's a problem. Regardless if it's a single person or shell companies or different companies or whatever. The issue does have to be, I think for any single company, you should not be able to hold more than 30 or 50 or whatever single family homes past that. It must be multiple family, like 2 to 3. That way you leave.
No, I think
the single family homes.
No companies, period, should be allowed to hold the real estate. Individual ownership only, capped at a certain number.
Which I'm fine with.
Period. Because if, this is kind of a tangent. AI-backed Cities Skylines 2,
mm-hmm.
They let AI play it.
Mm-hmm.
They ran a scenario where, and this is, I know it's a game, but it was a very realistic situation. Corporations were not allowed to own the housing properties, like the real estate properties. Yeah. They were allowed to own corporations, industrial, all that shit, mm-hmm. but no real estate for housing.
Yeah.
That housing market, it spiked
mm-hmm.
and then came back down and leveled off.
Yeah.
And it's kind of some interesting insight if you kind of step out and look at it. And they dove into the factors. They looked at the data and everything and determined that, yeah, if you get rid of the big landlords, housing prices come down.
Well, it's always supply and demand. And we do have a lot of space in this country. So
we need to start building a lot more houses.
And we
have like a 4.5 million house deficit right now.
Yeah. And the sad part is, of those 4.5 million, there's several million of them that are just vacant because these companies own so many houses that they can actually take the tax right off.
So there's a guy that's on, he's on social media, very smart guy. Mm-hmm. He's been a huge proponent of taking a lot of financial mm-hmm. wisdom and applying it. And vacant houses is one of them. If the house is sit vacant for a year, the holders need to start paying property taxes, house taxes, and some other things, and start essentially funding money back into the market for holding vacant houses.
So the way I saw it described,
if they're held for,
because I actually saw a very good breakdown of this. What you do is for every year that a house or a rental property is vacant, they have to put in the equivalent amount of rent in funds into an account mm-hmm. that is national. That's for an FHA loan, the first time home buyers.
Yeah, for first time buyers. Yep.
So the idea is the more these companies that decide to not pay in, then the more first time home buyers that can then buy a house. So either way, it's a self-correcting problem. So I don't know, because hey, if you want to own 100 properties and have 20 of them vacant for the tax write-off, great. Then after the first year of it being vacant, you're gonna have to pay the equivalent what the state or local government sets, that's the rent for it. You're just gonna have to pay it monthly in a tax. And it all mm-hmm. goes to that FHA account. That way when someone goes to buy a house, they're like, hey, we brought in this much last year, and there's this many people applying this year. So you're in line to say, hey, you get 20 grand or 10 grand or 30 grand or whatever. And for a lot of people, that would make an immense amount of difference. For a lot of people, that could change their life for some people. To actually be able to afford a house.
That same guy that I was talking about was talking about funding FHA programs.
Because I know the guy you're talking about. I totally forget his name, but I saw him on a couple of podcasts mention that, and I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, he's somebody that needs a position in government and some authority.
Well, the idea for America is the easiest way to generate wealth is through land and through ownership. So what we should be promoting...
Look at Ray Kroc.
Exactly. Look at what we should be promoting is the idea of people buying land and starting businesses. And as you know from last podcast, I'm huge into both of those. It should be the case of, I really feel, to be honest with you, we should be reducing a lot of our property taxes, income taxes, stuff like that, get people to own homes, and then give us incentives to start small businesses, which I know your state might be doing that, which that's a whole different...
Yep.
Which I am so jealous. I spend over $600 a month in just property taxes.
God, that's
and you know what's crazy?
Gross.
My roads are some of the worst in the country. And we have some of the highest taxes on roads. It's great. I also have to pay an excise tax every year to the state for the privilege of having a fucking vehicle. They're like, hey, you have a vehicle. You got to pay a tax on that just for owning it, even though I already paid a sales tax for it. God, it makes me just want...
You're in the state that started the Revolutionary War. That's what pisses me off.
I know.
They need reminded. I'm sorry.
My state's full of a bunch of soy boys. I don't have to tell you. I'm so done with it. It makes me just want to buy a bulldozer and some plates. I already got the welder.
Oh.
But I do want to mention, I think Kiki in chat made a really good point. Or how about full U.S. citizenship if you want to buy anything more than one house? I agree with that 100%. I feel like if you're not a U.S. citizen, you should be able to buy one property. That's it. That's your vacation property. Anything more than that, you have to be an American citizen. Because I'm sorry, the fact that we have hordes and hordes of American farmland that was bought up by the Chinese is ridiculous. Absolutely not.
Yeah, any foreign
company,
foreign entities should not be allowed to buy that much land.
No,
especially near military bases.
You buy one, uno, singular, one, and that's your vacation house, and it's taxed as such. That's it.
Yeah. So, something else that we need to we'll steer back on track here.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The American job market as a whole is kind of undergoing a significant shift, and that really reflects a change in how people view careers and work overall. So I know you kind of talked about careers and whatnot, but a bit of a breakdown that we can discuss. The shifting landscape of the career mentality, and I know you touched on that, decline of the traditional career path. The notion of working for a single company for decades, climbing the linear corporate ladder, and retiring with a pension, it's less prevalent, mostly because pensions just don't exist anymore. There are a few companies out there. I know Pepsi, Coca-Cola, they still offer pensions. I think Ford, Honda, a couple of the bigger, ultra huge companies that can actually afford it still have them.
Yeah, but
but they're few and far between.
And all those all those companies are on the S&P 500 or NASDAQ. All of them are just the top 5 to 1,000 companies. And even then, most of them don't have it. It's literally a handful of the top ones, and only because they just have such an overwhelming profit margin, they're able to issue something that has not changed since the 80s. That's the other problem. It's not like their pensions now are making people millionaires. They're not.
No, they're not.
They're barely out-tracking the average 401k. Or they should have better 401k contributions. That's the other thing. Their pension might be, hey, instead of 5%, it's a 10% match.
Yeah, or you get a pension in lieu of a 401k match.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something.
Or the other ones I saw, too, is just stock options. It's like, we do a 401k match 5%, and we give you... The one I saw from Coca-Cola was something like $4,000 or $3,000 worth of equivalent stock or something like that every year, depending on the amount of hours you worked or something else. I haven't looked at it in a little bit. But it was something to where, like, nice. But that's not breaking the bank. That's not like, wow. That's not like how it was in the late 90s to the early 2000s, where you'd work for some IT company and somehow make $1 million in 4 or 5 years because you have all these stock options and everything else. Unfortunately, some of these companies have already expanded to where they're only going to make a few percent. Like Google.
Yeah. Increased job hopping has become a thing now. Staying with one employer for a long time is no longer the norm. Employees, especially the younger generations, looking at you, Gen Z, are more open to changing companies and roles to gain diverse experiences and potentially higher compensation. The younger generation are continually chasing the higher paycheck, and that is unfortunately the norm. People will just job hop to get the next pay raise because raises have become so low, or in most cases stagnant, that that's how you get a raise.
It's the unfortunate part of many companies. For some reason, I do not understand. Many companies feel like if you want a 5% or 10% raise in a year, they'd rather you just go and they'd rather train someone new. The problem is
it's going to cost more than that raise to replace the employee than it would be to just give the raise to the employee.
Which is weird. I found that a lot of jobs do not value the experience you've gained while you're there, but they'll pay you for the experience that you have before you get there. It's weird.
It's a weird trade-off.
So that's why there's a lot of people I know. I have a buddy of mine who's a chemical engineer. Every 3 years he trades, and he gets like a 10 or 20 grand bump every time.
Yeah.
So like,
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that people don't have any negotiation skills.
well, not only that, but okay. So here's a big question I have to a lot of people. This is something I'd love to hear from the audience as well as people understand. For your company, if HR are the people that are supposed to be in charge of hiring, firing, and doing all that, are those people actually held responsible for actually hiring people? Are they ever fired when they don't find people? Or are they ever held responsible when they have failed negotiations? The answer usually that 90% of that is no. They just kind of sit on their ass to protect the company, quite frankly. They're not there for you, they're there for them. So it's this weird problem of they hire people when they get around to it, if they find the right person that accepts the money. And then there's really no, how should I say, punishment if they just don't. And I can tell you, so from a friend of mine that works at a local hospital, they were short 12 people in their department.
That's a lot.
Yes, especially when their entire department had like 17.
Wow.
They were short 12. It took 3 months of another person and I applying there, because this was back when I was in college, applying there, never got a response. Never once. Myself and another person. And the other person I know that was working there was screaming at them, hey, we need to hire people. And they were like, yeah, but we'll get around to it. There's an issue I've seen, and this may be just in my experience, and something I've heard from a lot of people. One, there is no urgency for companies to hire, because at the end of the day, if the job market is bad, people will stay and be overworked, and they'll just deal with the conditions. And these companies know they have the leverage. So why would they bother hiring somebody else? Until they find somebody that's willing to be underpaid and overworked, they don't give a shit. And that is the sad
When
part.
it's an employer's market like that, they will take full advantage of it.
Oh, 100%. That's why there's a company that I left, because, again, with the employer's market, I was told one thing when I was hired, then I was told another thing after I started there, when it was completely wrong. The pay was wrong, the benefits were wrong, the hours were wrong. And I didn't really have a choice, because it's like, well, I got to fucking pay the bills and deal with shit, so this is what I got to do. And the sad part is, up until recently, up until about the early to mid-2000s, it had always been majority in the favor of the the employees. Every employer was like, we're itching to find people. We need to find people. We got to keep growing. Got to keep expanding. Got to keep doing more and more and more. Well, now we've hit the apex of, hey, taxes have made this and expenses have made this, so your company can't really grow anymore. You're going to be lucky to get 2% year over year. You can't do those 20% years anymore, those 10% years anymore. You're there. That's as big as you're going to get. And for a lot of companies, that's where they're at. There is no room for expansion. So without any government incentives or really reduces in taxes, or with the reduction of inflation, without any of those things happening, they are stuck there. And I would agree with you 100% on the negotiation part, because a lot of people, they can't negotiate at all for shit. And second, I hate to say it, but it does dive down to a lot of people in the younger generations, this is myself included, because they've been all over the place, they never got proficient at any one thing.
Yeah.
It's always
They got good enough.
They're passable in several things. And for some roles in some companies, that's great.
That's all you need.
But in order to be paid good money, you got to be good at a marketable skill. And if you are not proficient, not just passable, but proficient at something, you're not going to make good money at it. And I hate to say it, but the easiest way I could think of is, how much are you going to pay somebody that's a painter if they just do an okay job? Most people only pay good money for beautiful paintings. If you're not a beautiful painter, they're going to pay you $5. $5. Don't pay the bills.
$5 make you holler.
But it's that's the kind of thing where you have to be good enough to be marketable and be able to do more. And if you don't push for that, and don't get me wrong, it kind of sucks, because I'll admit, high school set a lot of us up for failure, and even college. Like, they didn't really actually push marketable skills or anything else like that.
Oh, yeah.
So for a lot of these kids, my heart goes out to you. I get it. I got lucky that with the things that I had and everything else I had going on, my experiences and my stuff, but holy fuck, it's very difficult in the way the market is right now.
And that's why a lot of us parents need to push onto our kids self-reliability, skills, marketable skills, especially. You can't get a degree in gender studies of giraffes and expect to come out of college and have a marketable skill. It just doesn't happen. You've got to go to a school, ideally a trade school with the way things are going, because I love Mike Rowe and the man pushes trade schools left and right because we have a massive trade skills deficit in this country. We need electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs, welders, construction workers even.
Oh, yeah.
That know what the hell they're doing. I mean, have you watched the videos of the people doing the home inspections? Dude, those are people's homes, and they're paying $300,000 to $800,000 for these new homes that are being put together by people, and they don't pass.
I can tell you why. And I hate
lack of enforcement of building code.
And I hate to be an asshole, and I'm going to have to say it. And I might get canceled for saying it, but I'm going to fucking say it.
Say the shitty thing.
They're hiring all illegals to do the work. It's 80% people that are not American citizens that don't speak English. Why? Because most American dudes, men and women, don't want to do that kind of work.
Not only that, but the ones that do, they cost too much.
Because there's the other problem. So it's the issue of it's very difficult to start your own construction company. It's very difficult to even start many of these trades. Because here's the other issue. And I got to call out some of the people that are already in the trades. In order to get started in some of these trades, a lot of these people are fucking assholes. And I understand, and I don't know if these people kind of get where I'm going with this, but if you are new in a trade, either an apprentice or a rookie, whatever, I understand a little bit of hazing. I get making fun of people. In some of it's been in all male environments that used to do construction and commercial kitchen installation, we all give each other epic amounts of shit. Don't get me wrong.
It's part of the process.
But part of the problem is not teaching.
Yes.
Here's the issue. You cannot be in a construction union or a welder's union or an HVAC union and say, wow, you know, it's weird. We keep hiring all these young kids, and if they keep leaving, they can't do the work. They're all fucking lazy. But the reality of it is they're not teaching them anything, and they're only just shitting on them their entire fucking day, and they're like, wow, I basically go to work to get bullied. There's a difference here that I don't think people realize. It's one thing to give each other shit and say, oh, nice job, Mike. Fucking great job, you idiot. And laugh and say, don't worry, we'll figure it out. The problem is there's a lot of people that are not leaders, yet they wonder why they can't lead a group.
So to piggyback on the lack of leadership, most companies have a lack of training as well. The training programs at the companies that I have seen is mediocre at best. And I've worked for some really good companies. There have been a few like very shining pebbles of training all-stars, I'll say. But outside of that, it's been, okay, here's the manual. Go ahead and read it. And then you're trained.
You know what's crazy? I have been with 3 different companies before the one I'm at. They didn't even have an onboarding process. They didn't even know.
A lot of places don't.
They're like, oh, welcome aboard. What are we doing here? You'll just figure it out. And then they get mad that you don't know how to do things, but they've never taught you. There's no structure. There's no training. The problem is a lot of companies have HR departments, which ideally they're supposed to handle this. The onboarding and training and everything. And what they don't fucking do is handle any of it. All they do is say, wow, that's great. We're HR. Bring your complaints to us, and we're just going to sit in our office. And I can't finish the rest of that sentence because that's not Twitch appropriate. But it enrages me beyond, because really at the end of the day, your boss or your manager, whoever's hiring you, it's their job to teach you how to do your job. And people might be saying, well, you might be hired with...
And a lot of...
Sorry, you go.
A lot of cases, you get one person in charge of 20, 50, 100 people. They cannot be expected to train each and every one of them when, let's say, one guy gets 100 people and there's 10 different departments and each department is vastly different. That one guy or person cannot be reasonably expected to know every position well enough to train, to the standards that each position needs to be held to.
And that's
what leads are for, but that's also what training programs are for.
precisely.
And this is why people leave those positions and go and drive for Uber or DoorDash or Uber Eats or Postmates. They're their own boss at that point.
And there used to be companies where you would actually be hired in a position and your job was to train people, to onboard people. They were dedicated people for these jobs. I mean, to give you guys an idea, a little bit of background, like why this really pisses me off. My grandfather was one of the head engineers for Xerox back when they invented the Xerox machine, did the whole printer thing and everything. And my grandfather, incredibly smart guy, also incredibly on the spectrum, but incredibly smart guy. Love him to death.
It must be genetic.
Very funny. Listen, I don't even have a good response for that. I know what I am. But the point I'm getting at is with his company, they were dedicated people in his department. But the idea was whenever they got new technicians or engineers, they would spend months with them to train them on their standards, their process, their procedures, just to even how to do their own paperwork. So everything was exactly the same. They had people dedicated to it that got paid good money. Like damn near six figures back in the 90s. I couldn't believe it when he and I spoke about it years ago. But that's because these companies wanted to make sure that people were well trained and that as long as you just followed the process and actually put in the effort, you could do it. But unfortunately, they wonder why a lot of the younger generation has burnout. It's simple. You show up to a job, you're not trained how to do it, and then you're yelled at for not knowing how to do it. It's like, what do I just come to work to get fucking yelled at? Like, no, if I want to be abused, I just go hang out with my family. Like, not for nothing. It's just, it's not, what are we doing here?
God.
You know, I know that was a little too close to home, but you get my point. Sorry, I'm in a very yelly mood today. But, but I know a lot of people my age and younger that feel like this. And unfortunately, I hate to be an asshole, but there's a lot of people that are in the older age range that run these companies. They are not as involved or understanding because as you get older, this happens to everybody. This is not just the current older generation. This is everybody that gets older. One day I'll be that fucking asshole. But at some day you get old enough to the point to where you're too removed from the day-to-day operations and expectations and how things are constantly evolving and changing. In every single business, something is evolving or changing every single day. And if you are not keeping track with that, you will fall behind. And especially with the needs that are changing, with demands that are changing, if you're not constantly updating your training, your standards, evaluations, if you're not looking at these things, you will fall behind. And that's why these companies fail. Or better yet, that's why they can't find new people. That's why they can't hire. Yeah. Every company that says, wow, we can't retain or hire people, congrats, you are the fucking problem. It's literally you. Because I know other people that have, family companies or local places that, God,
they thrive.
They throw up an ad for somebody to get hired within a week. They're like, oh yeah, we need this position. Cool. Hire. Look at this. Interview them. Cool. I've had companies where it took me months just to get an interview, and they were actively looking for me. Like, oh, you're an awesome candidate. Great. Let's do the background check. And I'm waiting for 2 months. Like, hello. I thought you wanted me. Like, what are we supposed to do? So I don't. Sorry for my rant, but like, fuck. I know other people agree with me on this though.
Oh, 100%. Literally everything you said is essentially true. We will all become those get off my lawn type people at some point, but you have to go through the stages when you're not given the tools to do your job. How are you supposed to do your job? You can't change a tire without the wrenches, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're told to go change a tire, but then you don't have the tools to do it, and then someone comes out and asks you why it's not done, what are you supposed to do?
And I do agree.
So,
Wookie does make a point, and I do want to address this like 2 seconds really quickly. Wookie in the chat made a point. Don't forget about the DEI portion of this. I will tell you my limited experience with what I can say. It's sad that we have gone away from meritocracy. Thankfully, we're going back to that. But hiring people just solely based off the color of their skin to add diversity Does not help.
Mm.
They do not focus on diversity of thought or background or education. They focus on diversity of skin color, which is inherently racist, and I'm just not a fan of it. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
If companies were smart, they'd focus on diversity of backgrounds and educations. That way you have more to bring to the table, but they assume you have more to bring to the table because of the color of your skin, which is inherently bullshit. So, just because you're a different color doesn't mean you grew up any differently.
Yeah. So, getting a little bit back on track.
Sorry.
No, you're good. The rants take us down the rabbit holes that we need to go down.
The rat holes.
The rabbit holes turn into foxholes.
You know, can we make a shirt out of that? I turn my rabbit holes into foxholes. It's just like it just shows like CNN or MSNBC holding guns, like shooting like dislikes or something like that. I don't know. That'd be kind of funny.
Yes.
I'll AI that later.
Get Anderson Cooper out there with an AR-15 that looks like a dildo that has like the big.
Yes. It fires dislikes. That's all it does.
Yes. Erosion of employer loyalty. You can no longer expect lifelong employment and strong loyalty between employers and employees due to factors like mass layoffs, outsourcing, and organizational restructuring. Yeah, those days are long gone. Getting on with a company and working there for 40 years and then getting your gold Rolex and riding off to retirement does not exist anymore. So you jump around, you find what works for you, and you stick there for a few years, get some resume padding, and then you move on. Focus on the flexibility and work-life balance. Modern workers, especially those under 30, prioritize flexibility, autonomy, and a better work-life balance over the security of the traditional 9-to-5 jobs. Hence the rise of the gig economy, like your DoorDash drivers, your Uber Eats, Lyft, those types of deals, because they can work when they choose to work. They are their own bosses. They are the master of their own domain. They answer to no one. I will say, when I was doing DoorDash for a while, I quite enjoyed it. To be fair, I was doing that when we were getting the stimulus money and the tips flowed like wine.
Something to consider too is I think a lot of people that are younger understand that if I work a 9-to-5, I'm barely going to make more money, but I have to deal with someone else's bullshit. Whereas if I could just do something like this, I make a little less money, but I work wherever the fuck I want. I could sleep in till 11 or noon if I want to, and work until midnight if I want. So a lot of people complain that, oh, the young people don't want to work. I tell them that's bullshit. They just don't want to work for you.
Yes. The growth of the independent work, the gig economy, characterized by short-term contracts, freelance work, and on-demand jobs, has expanded significantly, especially due to COVID. A substantial portion of the U.S. workforce now engages in gig work for various reasons, including flexibility and the ability to choose their own projects. I know retirees are a huge portion of that. I cannot tell you the amount of people that I have had DoorDash, or when I DoorDash, are 60 plus.
That's so sad.
I know.
I hate seeing that. Like, I hate seeing older people
Now,
go to work.
I want to say that it's sad, but like the good in me is like, I really hope that they're just doing it because they're bored.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I really, really hope that that's the case for these people.
Yeah, for some of them maybe, but I hate to say it, I doubt it. For most of them, I bet you
It's
a
probably not.
necessity.
I can hope it all that I want, but it's probably not.
Yeah, because unfortunately, people have to pay taxes on their Social Security, so therefore they never make that much.
That has to stop. That has to fucking stop. Technological enablement, online platforms and apps have made it easier for individuals to connect with short-term work opportunities and for companies to hire independent contractors. Again, companies like DoorDash can let you be your own employer boss, 1099 employee type deal. They don't have to have an employee workforce. They don't have to have insurance or anything like that.
Yep.
It works out for both people, the employer and the employee. So, and like you said, just finding out when the good times to work are in your area when you're doing something like DoorDash can be a huge benefit. If you know that the breakfast and lunch rush is great and then it's quiet for 6 hours, and then it's banging for like 4 hours in the evening, you can split your workday in half if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
You can work 9 to 1 and then be off for 6 or 7 hours and then work, 6 to 9. And then you've got a full day of work in and you've been able to do what you need to do and you get paid that day. That's also a nice thing.
And also consider nowadays, unfortunately, most companies, it's very difficult to do anything medically or anything else outside of the traditional 9 to 5 work week. So then if you work 9 to 5, you then can't do anything with your kids or do anything officially between at a bank, which, by the way, the fact that banks are closed Sundays is absolute bullshit. That's beside the point. But the fact that so many things aren't open on weekends means if you're a regular 9 to 5 person like me or you, during the week, we can't do shit. And then on the weekend, half of everything's closed anyway. So for younger people where it's like the money doesn't matter as much as the flexibility, I don't blame them at all. And especially considering the amount of ways you can make things on like Etsy or Fiverr or even doing internet sponsorships if you have any sort of following on like TikTok or Instagram or social media stuff. You could literally just do DoorDash and then do online shit and make as much or more.
Or like I've been doing with Facebook Marketplace and the planners that I've been selling.
Exactly.
I cannot wait to be done with these things.
Hey, you chose to start a small business, my man. You chose to.
I know, but I want to make other things.
Well, start making them.
I have to get through this season.
Oh, well.
Let's see. Skills-based hiring. The gig economy often emphasizes specific skills and project-based work, leading to a rise in skills-based hiring. Yeah, when you take on 1099 and project-based work, if you've got one or two things that you're really good at, you can go fill roles pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a permanent hire. It can be a contract deal, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. You're in, you're out, and you're gone. Then you're on to the next deal. And a lot of people love that kind of work because they get a lot of experience, a lot of different places. They see new technology, new environments, new people. They get a lot of networking done that way. And that can lead to a lot of things right there. It's literally not what you know. It is who you know.
The greatest piece of advice I can give to anybody that's younger is you don't go to college to learn. You go to college to network, to learn and know some different people. And also, number two, if you are somebody that's pleasurable to be around, like you actually have like a good attitude, you're personable, you're charismatic. I'll be honest, to give you an idea how effective that is, I was unemployed from my previous job for a whole 3 hours. I was charismatic and I was able to call up. I had a person call that wanted to hire me before I went to the previous dealership. I was like, hey, how you doing? And I was still fucking pissed because I was let go the Wednesday before Christmas. And I was like, this fucking sucks. Because half the service team got fired because of quarterly reports. Because that's what happens when you work at a dealership. It's all about what the parent company says that they sell from. So when they say, hey, sales are down, you're going to have to let go of people or else we're not going to be able to support you. The new guy gets let go. It happens. But anyways, I was unemployed for a whole 3 hours because they gave me a call and I was like, yeah, this just happened. I'd love to meet up. And I was a big fan of you before. And I know you weren't able to hire me before, but I'd love to come and talk. If you have time today or tomorrow, I'd love to come and have an interview. And literally was like, yeah, just come on down if you happen to be free. And went over, chatted with the guy. He's like, dude, you're awesome. You're hired. And it's the thing is, if you can stand out when you're on the younger side and just be personable, knowledgeable, and do a little bit of research before you actually go in for an interview, learn about the company, learn about what they do, learn about some things, and put in the effort, you'll be fine because you'll be one of the standout people. Just don't be the young person that shows up that acts like they don't give a fuck. Because then you're going to look like the rest of them. And I hate to be like an asshole, but that is such a prevailing thing that I see. Is they're like, well, I'll just go get another minimum wage job or low paying job, so why bother? Why care? I can always just DoorDash and I'll still make about the same. And it sucks they're in the situation, but they're not wrong.
Yeah. So a couple things that I want to point out. I have a bunch of other stats, but I feel like I'm just kind of being dry and reading on. But the unemployment rate has remained relatively low at 4.2% as of March of 2025. The non-farm payroll or employment increased in March by 228,000 jobs So there is some job growth. And that's non-farm. So unfortunately, that does include government jobs.
Yeah.
However, I think with Doge swinging the banhammer, a lot of those government jobs are going away.
Yes.
So I don't think that reflects the Doge adjusted workforce numbers.
That's something we have to get later on when we can actually get more numbers from Doge more clearly.
Yeah, I'll give it another month or so and they'll be out.
Oh, yeah.
But the big job gains did occur in sectors like healthcare, social assistance, and transportation, as well as warehousing. So there's a big emphasis on skilled labor with adaptability in the workforce. So to sum up all that, the American job market is moving away from the rigid long-term career and moving towards a more fluid environment that includes a growing gig economy, the resurgence of the importance of and desirability of the skilled trade professions. It's driven by a lot of technological advancements, worker preferences, and the evolving needs of businesses across the country. Now, here's something that Gibbs and I differ vastly on. With the changing job market comes changing income and financial stability issues. I think I've talked a little bit in previous episodes about the possibility of the need for UBI, Universal Basic Income. This is a topic that gets some coverage here and there. When people get into debates about this, it can get kind of heated because even me being a fairly right-leaning libertarian type person, it is an extremely socialist perspective because it is a social support construct. If some of the ideas that we have put forward on this podcast are followed, the math will actually math out, and it is possible, but constraints and other devices have to be put in place. So yes, it's the age-old adage of, oh, it has to be done the right way for this socialism to work.
Typical communist.
Then typical communist, yes. I am not a communist. I am not a socialist. But a lot of other things have to be done correctly for a program like this to be put in place. Do I think UBI will ever be a thing? No, I do not. Do I think that the government and the other entities of the U.S. need to consider something that's maybe UBI adjacent? I really do.
So maybe explain
Because
to people in the audience that might not know what UBI means.
I said universal basic
Oh, okay. I
income.
didn't know you said that. My bad.
Yeah, you weren't paying attention. It's cool. With the continuing development of automation, robotics, AI, and the shifting workforce, I really, really feel that something either UBI or UBI adjacent is going to have to be developed at some point down the pipeline because people are not going to be able to survive on the jobs that they're able to ascertain within the economy that's going to be on the spectrum in 10, 15 years. Now, if we're asteroid mining by then, that might be a different story. Because I would like to be an asteroid miner myself. I would also like to be digitally uploaded into a scenario where I can be an asteroid miner. Go listen to episode 2.
So what?
Go ahead.
So the crux to what you're proposing is effectively a universal basic income that's a standard. That way, people's basic necessities are paid for. The idea is you have, I'm assuming, like a house, you have enough for food and public transportation, like the minimal necessities.
Yeah, so it's not like, hey, we're going to cover all your shit. It's more or less like $1,000, $1,500 on the high end, maybe even $2,000 per person per month. And it's on a sliding adjustment scale. And the more that you actually earn, the less you get from the UBI. There are things like VAT taxes that go into refund this thing. when people die, anything in their accounts gets rolled back into it. Consumption tax. There are things that have to be put back in place. A flat tax obviously has to be instituted to make this work, as well as the elimination of a lot of other current social support programs.
If you're doing that in lieu of other things, that may be possible. But I still think there would have to be a requirement that in order for you to receive UBI, you have to have a regular job or be on disability or be on Social Security. So the idea is effectively your employment status is either you're working or you're disabled or you're collecting because you're retired.
Yeah.
Because that's my worry, is that there's going to be a lot of people that say, oh, I get $2,000, $1,500 a month. I will just van life that shit and just collect it out of a post box, a PO box that I have. And sure, like being a nomad for a while is fine, but your entire life not contributing back into society, just being a detriment, I feel like that would kind of suck. Because there's a lot of people that would just check out, which, like, don't get me wrong, if that's what you want to do, that's your call. But then for how long can we subsidize that is the...
Right. Well, even those people are still going to have to eat. They're going to have to buy parts for their vans, for their van life. I mean, they're still going to recontribute back into the program. Now, if they're not working, maybe they get less.
Okay.
I don't have all the answers. This is not a one-man solution. But it's something that could be laid out and then worked out.
It's something that could work.
But it absolutely could work. It literally just needs fleshed out and worked out and looked at. Some of the arguments for UBI in the context of the changing job market. Automation and job displacement. I already mentioned some of that. The rise of the gig economy. If you've got people who are working as gig workers, imagine what an extra $1,000 a month could do to help them out. That'd be great for folks like that. I mean, if jobs are just not available, but you can do gig work, the UBI is to support that. Supportive entrepreneurship. If you're starting a business, you get maybe max UBI for X amount of time during the first X amount of months during a new business to supplement that. Things like that could be done. Improved health and well-being. You'll be able to cover and afford your doctor visits, paid time off from work to attend doctor visits and whatnot, paid transportation to the doctor. There are things that can be put in place to make sure that people are being taken care of that need to be taken care of in that capacity.
Valid.
Labor supply. This is one you were just saying, and I'll just read this directly from what I found earlier. Critics of UBI often worry that it could disincentivize work, leading to a decrease in labor supply. Some studies on UBI have shown the slight reduction in hours worked, but others indicate that recipients largely retain their jobs and may use the income to pursue education or better job opportunities. So they're going to work, not have to stress about the bills, maybe even go to school while they've got the extra money.
It does open up avenues.
I mean,
sorry, you go.
If you were working a job and you were getting like mid-level UBI and it was like $1,200 extra a month, you wouldn't have to stress about the bills. You could afford to go and do something with the wife and kids or whatever.
I mean, it's something that could work. It's just always the catch of making sure that those people that are taking the money out, that money is going back in to do something of use. In that it's not leaving the country or it's not doing something else. I'm not.
Yeah.
I guess that's my worry with it is I never trust the government being in charge of running something because every single time they run it to the ground and then shit it out and then burn it 100%. And then bury it again. So it's the case of if it was done for the very limited idea of like, hey, you have these very strict criteria where you can get it, otherwise you don't, then that's fine. But as long as like it's very well defined, I believe is my issue with that. Because I would agree that for a lot of particularly younger people that are trying to get a start in life that just simply can't, it would be massive. Because here's one thing that I wanted to bring up this entire debate and now this discussion, now that we're finally here. The biggest thing that would help young people do is start families. Have you looked at, I want to pull up some data that I saw. Do you
Look at the cost of
Well-
daycare. That's discouraging enough.
not only that, did you know by almost 20 million people, there's more millennials than Gen Z?
Eh.
We are at the point where it's supposed to be a pyramid. But right now, it's diamond shaped. It's
Wow.
by almost 20 million. If there's like 15 to 20 million as of the count, as I saw from a couple of days ago. The problem is we're going to have an inverted pyramid at some point, to where the younger generation simply cannot afford to have kids. And here's the problem. We can't just have a bunch of immigration, have people bring kids here, because then they don't assimilate into the culture, into the society, and they're not invested in the country. So the problem you have to have is you really have to incentivize people that are here to be able to have kids. And right now,
Got to start cranking out them babies.
the problem is people are not incentivized to do that. There's no way. Like for most young people, if you got to spend a couple $1,000s per month per kid on daycare, but you need 2 incomes to live, congratulations, you now can't have kids. It's just, the math is that simple. There is no mathing your way out of this problem. And for a lot of people, especially nowadays, maybe it's just because of the area of the country that I live in. I know a lot of people that are not that close with their family, that aren't that close with their parents. I know a lot of people that would not send their kids to their parents' house to have them watch over them while they were at work, or their grandparents or whoever. For a lot of people I know, unfortunately, we've developed a society where you have to be 100% self-sufficient, which means if you can't afford the daycare yourself, you're just not having kids. It's that simple. So with something like UBI, with daycare assistance and other things, I would agree. That would help people start families, because you always have to have, for a society to be successful, you have to have that pyramid structure of the most amount of people are the newborn kids, and then you got the other kids and the teenagers, then it goes up smaller, smaller, and smaller. The issue is right now, we are projecting for Gen Alpha, they're looking at, so if millennials are like 76 million, and then you have the Gen Z that are like 55 or 60 million, what do you think Gen Alpha is going to be? Because right now they're projecting about 35 mil.
20 to
They're
30.
projecting about 30 to 35. Here's the problem.
Wow.
What happens when millennials outnumber Gen Alpha 2 to 1 and they're in their 50s or 60s? What happens to retirement? What happens to, better yet, any single...
It collapses.
Well, this is the problem I see. This is the thing I wanted to wait till near the end to bring up. Any single job that requires physical attributes or physical things to do will be in the biggest demand possible. You are looking things like any single trade. EMS services, police, fire, medical, any of the things that you need on a daily basis to operate, those kids that are going to be at half the amount means their job's going to pay double as much, if not more. They're going to fight for every person. So weirdly enough, all these problems we're talking about eventually might self-correct. The problem.
Might.
Do you know what's happening in Oklahoma right now?
No.
So basically, they are going to be losing most of their EMS personnel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a bad place to have a heart attack.
So one of the things that's happening is because of between the restructuring and the renegotiations for contracts and everything else, there are so many EMS or emergency personnel that are being paid near minimum wage or barely above it, and they're not getting inflationary increases, that you can literally make more money stocking shelves at Walmart at 22 to 23 an hour than you would being in EMS. So what's happening is normally, I saw a statistic, and I do want chat to fact check this because I heard it on Thursday. They usually get several 100,000 people involved in EMS in Oklahoma. And from what I heard, they only had 7,000 new applicants. Normally there's tens of thousands, if not 100,000. They are going to be losing people. And those people are going to be dropping like flies. But more importantly, with this inverted chart, with this inverted age bracket, how many firefighters are going to be in their 50s and 60s? How is this going to work? Especially with our poison food supply and everything else going on, with people being unhealthy as hell.
The robots are going to save us.
Well,
Elon's robots are going to come to the rescue. It's going to be the only savior.
No, you know what? I think this might end up, however, self-correcting the problem. Because if there's half the amount of people, all of a sudden, now the I guess the leverage is in back of the hands of the employees. Now all of a sudden it becomes a market where they're demanding more people. So as long as we're aware that this is the future we're going to, understand that eventually there will be the inverted triangle, and understand everybody my age and younger needs to understand the reason why I keep saying you'll never get retirement or you'll never get Social Security. There won't be enough people to pay for it. You could tax every company 100% and pay for it for maybe a year or two. And then now you lose everything. So
yeah,
this is why we keep promoting these things. I keep talking about this. This is something that is, I think a lot of politicians are 5-10 years behind the ball on this one. There's a reason why Poland in Europe is pushing families really hard. There's a reason why they pay people every month when they have more children. Anything past 3 or 4, even 5 kids, they start paying them monthly. They don't even pay taxes. They get the opposite. Because Poland sees what we're going to be going through in a few decades. And I'm not saying Poland's perfect. They have their other issues, but at least they understand that the country has to beat. That basically, there's like a replacement factor. It's like 2.1 or 2.2 or something like that. Where as long as you could beat or exceed that, your country can grow and be healthy. If you don't, you're going to have the problem that we're going to have, which is there's going to be a bunch of people your age and my age that are going to be, waiting on the phone for a strong, young, strapping police officer or EMS agent. One of us breaks our hips. And we're going to realize they are 1 hour and 47 minutes away because, there's 9 in the whole state.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's because we made it so expensive for people to have kids and have families. So, hopefully we can fix that.
Yeah.
But
we do this podcast mostly because we love to do it. It's a hobby for us, but we'd like to talk about things that don't get enough attention in the limelight. It's one of the reasons why I personally really wish that people in places of power and ability to make changes would listen to the show. Will that ever happen? I don't know. We can only hope. We just need to go to Truth Social and start adding all the politicians.
Watch this cool podcast.
But
maybe what we could do is we can hire the bot programs you can hire. Maybe we'll just use them to start spamming our podcast on every single politician, left and right. I don't care.
Ooh, there we go.
Oh my God, can I annoy AOC so much that she actually has to shout us out by denouncing us? That'd be hilarious.
That's awesome.
I take
I
it.
love it.
I take it. I don't care.
So I've got a lot of other points on UBI, but I think we've driven the point home. It could work. There are some hurdles to overcome it. It needs work. It needs flushed out, but it's something that if done correctly, it actually could make a huge difference for a lot of people. Yeah. Of course, upper income caps and, whatnot, sliding scale, all that shit.
Well, especially for people that are retirees as well, people that are on disability, people that are so disabled they can't work or anything else like that, plus other stuff. It really could work as long as you kind of rein it in. And
absolutely,
maybe with all the tariff stuff and everything else, maybe we could do an episode down the road of, like we did the last episode, fixing the American economy, but we could throw in UBI and a few other things and see how exactly it would work.
Yeah, I had slated UBI to be its own separate episode, but I felt tying it into this episode was probably more appropriate. So we'll see what develops. But as we had discussed in the previous episodes, Doge is doing a lot to cut government waste. And honestly, if that mentality is applied more going forward in the future, as well as the tariffs and some tax policies that have been discussed, I know President Trump just announced that there's a possibility that there will be zero income tax on people making under $150,000 or $200,000 a year. I mean, come on, love him or hate him, that's going to be a great thing if it's actually put through. tax policies that need to be adjusted, and even policies that have been discussed on this show. We are literally solving countrywide issues one episode at a time on this podcast, as crazy as it sounds.
Hey, all I'm saying is that if we could get together a few other smart people as well and make a think tank and just start posting stuff on websites and make it seem like we're like this big international think tank, I bet you would get national publicity. I bet you. I'd be able to post links and do stuff and also talk about Doge. They're at roughly $371 billion, by the way.
Oh, wow. What were we, since we have the running note list?
371 billion. And that's recommended savings.
What were we at?
For what?
During the last, when we did the show.
I don't remember.
About that
I really don't remember what it was at.
Oh, I didn't have the snippet.
I forget. I think there's a screenshot of when for the U.S. national debt.
Well, the national debt during that show when we did the snippet was $36,721,237,000,000. What's it at now?
36.783. So it's gone up 50 billion.
That's actually not bad because that's been a couple weeks.
That's sad. That's really sad that you've said, oh yeah, it's only got a 50 billion in a couple of weeks of debt. Yeah. Because there was a time where it was going up. Wasn't there a few months where it was like $1 trillion every few months? There
was a time it was $1 trillion a week.
Fucking Christ. So kills me. But we're on the right track. They're getting there. But honestly, the fact that Doge is able to save us enough for a small European nation. Yeah.
That says something. Again, you do not have to like the people that are in charge of the place to approve of the job that they are doing. Are they going about it the right way? Maybe not. But the outcome is still a good thing. Will some things need to be adjusted after it's all said and done? Probably.
Well, people forget Elon Musk isn't firing people. He's just making recommendations with the people he's with. Yeah. And by the way, he is going to be stepping away from that in the coming months because as a not like a government,
it was a temporary position.
You can only work, I think it's like 130 days. He's already been working almost every day since Trump was inaugurated. So he literally has like 30 or 40 days left. So he will be stepping away, and then I think all that hate is just going to magically disappear because it's not Elon.
No. Well, people have short memories. Give it a year. We'll see. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, how are the clips coming along? You promised the last show we would have clips last week.
I don't like you holding me accountable.
Where are my clips, Gibbs?
Where are the clips, Mansley?
Oh, by the way, Mansley is what I'm calling the guy on our cover art.
I like it. Mansley the mascot. I'm like, all right. All right. So are we going to be like Iron Maiden? That Iron Maiden has like their big mascot, so we're going to have a mascot?
Probably.
Mansley's going to be our archangel of the apocalypse. I can't.
Archangel.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't English that. Angel.
I don't know.
I can't.
Words are difficult.
Words.
So just a few bits of housekeeping. We now have an open, operating, functional Facebook group.
Yes.
It is called the Now We Consume Podcast Fans. The link will be going out after the show, so you can look for that. If you look at any of our posts, the link will be there. You're welcome to join. We'll see what kind of shenanigans we can get into there. Probably just try to have some people come in and share the show there.
Post some memes, post some fun stuff, interact.
Yeah, just, nothing too horrible.
No.
Dark humor is great, but, we'll try to keep it reasonable.
Put it this way, if you don't want your employer to see it, probably don't post it there. Because it's Facebook, let's be real.
I mean, it's a closed group,
okay.
So, we can be a little loose and wild, but still, if there's a chance that
Just please
I don't
don't
know.
break any
Well-
local or federal laws, please. That's not.
Yes.
No, I will throw
Yeah.
you under the bus if you break a federal law. I have no qualms about that.
Yes. I started trying out the laser with some potential merch ideas. I have a metal business card that's got the noodles and nips on it, and it's got a QR code that takes you to the YouTube page. It actually
It's
works.
pretty dope.
I posted that in the Discord, and it's actually pretty
I'm
awesome.
pretty impressed with it.
I was very impressed with it.
I
It
will
came
I
out
will pay
great.
you for a metal business card.
Okay. I will mushroom stamp it just
see,
for
now,
you.
Now I have to disinfect it.
I will say that the smell of laser ablated spray paint is wonderful. It gave me all kinds of wonderful brain things. So
Yes, the brain tinglies.
the brain tinglies.
Yes, the static in my mind. It is now tangible.
Yes. I got some leather keychains as well that I'm going to try out. So if anybody is interested in anything that, we can put up as something that you might want to have around, I'm taking suggestions.
Eventually, I do
So-
want to do the merch stuff and get a few things organized. I will finally get paid this week, so I can start doing the AI stuff here. I'm very excited for on Wednesday. I get paid.
Where are our clip skips?
That's honestly, I'm just going to use the AI thing
Where
to
are they?
do it.
That's fine. You promised us clips.
I know.
Where are
I
the
didn't get
clips?
paid.
Fucking,
Yell
I'll
yell at
fund
my
it.
boss.
You can just pay me back or pay
at my
half.
boss. Well,
Yeah.
So the thing is, I was supposed to have my 30-day review 3 months ago and my 90-day review back on the 9th of this month, and it's now the 28th. So I kind of was like, hey, when are we having that? It was supposed to be last Friday. And then it didn't happen, and it was supposed to be this last Friday. And then it didn't happen.
Just ask him if the 30-day
And
review
it
is
was
still
supposed
happening.
to happen today.
That'll jar
and
them.
it didn't happen. So I kind of said, hey, it's happening tomorrow, right? And he said, yeah. So either it happens tomorrow, or I don't know what I'm going to do at that point. So
You just type up the paperwork with your own raise and submit it to him for signature and then to HR.
he is HR. It's a small company. So yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. But so possible merchant stuff, the Facebook group, find the Discord. The Discord link will be in the episode notes or description rather, with all the episodes now. In the past, going forward, it'll be there. So find us, join us, be one of us. Love the noodle.
Love the noodle. Wrong kind
noodles
of
and
show.
nips.
A little personal.
But I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Hit up the socials, do all the things, and join us next
Thank
week.
you for listening to us rant for a little bit. We appreciate it.
Yes, two fat guys ranting about life.
I know.
It's great.
We should really rant about pizza one of these days or something. I don't know. Maybe switch it up.
A food episode. Oh, we're an episode that our food is killing
Oh
us.
yeah, that's on our list.
that is on the block. That's on our list.
Well, now that I do
So-
want to mention really quickly because I know what's his name? Thank
RFK?
you. Jesus Christ, I'm losing my mind.
His nickname is Brainworm. So just
RFK just talked about they're going to be making a bunch of the dyes illegal in the U.S. So
yeah, they've already started changing the names of the dyes to try to get around it. Yeah, fun
Pirate
times.
Squad. I'm sorry,
Yep.
I'm so sick of it.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yep.
we'll definitely have to do an episode on that.
Yes. So, all right. You guys, thank you for joining us. Have a great night. We love you. And we'll catch you next time.